I got saved in here, actually, in this room. He preached a message called No Compromise.
No compromise. No compromise. Every once in a while, God will just give me something so clear that I couldn't miss it if I had my eyes closed and my ears stuffed. And one day I was just sitting reading my Bible, and all of a sudden God gave me a message they give to whoever listened. No compromise.
He talked about Moses and how, I might get some of this wrong, but how the Israelites were leaving, and there were so many things that Pharaoh wanted them to compromise, and how every time they turned around, they would say, no compromise, no compromise.
Compromise starts so small in our lives, and then all of a sudden, next thing we know, everything's out of hand. And God showed me that in my life, in your life, in anybody's life who wants to live anything close to what Jesus has for us to live, there is to be no compromise. Shout it out, no compromise. No compromise.
Pastor Stephen and I were inseparable. We saw a lot of concerts. Music was very important to us, so we saw Green Day, we saw Pearl Jam, we saw REM, all the bands that we loved growing up. We kind of always did that together. We would pump each other up about girls. And I would like this girl and she would not like me, and we would both be like, you're so much better than her. So we'd have hour-long sessions where we just kind of encourage each other about the lack of our dating prowess, I guess. So it was the beginning of our junior year in high school, and this guy Jody came to Monk's Corner to do a revival.
It was a hole-in-the-wall diner where we sat and ate together and discussed about maybe what this really means for us to really consider Jesus to be Lord of our lives.
We went out to eat and he paid, which was great, and started to share the gospel with me.
Stephen was trying to figure out, do I believe the gospel to be truth or not?
A few days later, I found myself knocking on his door and asking more questions about Jesus. And that was the week that I crossed the line of faith, took everything I've been taught all my life, and actually internalized it in my heart and in my life and believed it, and it made a difference.
So Stephen makes a profession of faith at First Baptist Church, Monk's Corner, just publicly says, Jesus is Lord of my life.
And I remember being kind of frozen because this guy that is, my best friend that we go to rock shows with, that we do this and that with, is, down at the front of our Baptist church. I was like, what is happening right now?
It was hard for me because when he got saved, it was the real thing. It was the real thing. And all of a sudden, you have your 16-year-old. Can I say he lost his friends? He was with the popular crowd, and he was a popular kid. And see, have to cut that part.
I remember him having, very lonely times as well, because you go from having this big social network of friends and then all of a sudden feeling alienated.
They were still going to do their thing. They were still going to do their party thing. And once Stephen made his decision, he would give up whatever he had to give up to serve him.
And I remember him being very direct, saying, hey, man, things are different in my life. Things are changed. I love you, but, there are some things in my life that'll change. And I just remembered having a very hard time accepting that.
I just have to think that God just spoke to him in such a way that he knew that whatever he had been looking for, all of a sudden God spoke, he knew.
He joined the choir.
We had to teach him how to clap and how to move, but he took all that instruction to heart. And he was a light for the class of 1998 at Berkeley High School.
He revamped what the FCA looked like at his high school.
So when I met Stephen through FCA and he became our president, just did a great job. And so I asked him if he would be our youth pastor here. And, I wound up needing to talk to his mom and dad. And I remember sitting on the living room floor talking to Faith, his mom, and I told his mom when I was talking to her, I saw God's hand on Stephen like no other young man that I had encountered.
When he went to work at Santee Circle Community Church, and when he would preach there, you just knew that's what he was born to do.
He ended up going to the same college that I went to. We'd been traveling together all summer.
He traveled to the middle of nowhere, South Carolina, and preached to a youth group of 17 kids with no compensation, no glamour, no accolades, no reward.
He never turned down a speaking engagement. It was never, this isn't good enough for me, or this isn't enough people, or I don't want to drive there. He said yes to everything that his calendar could hold.
So we had gone to different schools. I went to the College of Charleston for 2 years, and he and I were in touch constantly during that time. And I was a train wreck. Focused on, partying and girls and all the college stuff. And he was, doing great things at North Greenville, already developing, ministry skills and doing what he does. And I'd gotten into some trouble. And so one summer I was home, I was back home, didn't want to be home, was actually worried about whether or not I was even going to be able to go back to College of Charleston. In this room on a Friday night, my dad forced me to come. He said, hey, I hear Pastor Stephen's going to be in town. You want to come hear him and see him? You hadn't seen him in a while. So we did. We sat right back there, and
It's not too far gone for God tonight. No compromise. No compromise. Only people who utter those words and live those words out will receive the fullness of God's blessing.
no compromise, no compromise. And that's why I told him I felt like it resonated with me at that point in my life, was that if I wanted to see a change that I was hoping for, there couldn't be a compromise. There had to be no compromise.
I'm not talking to everybody, but I'm talking to somebody. Have you received it? Have you received the grace of God? Have you really, really, really settled it in your heart that He's the only one you're going to serve? That He's the only way to heaven? Have you really surrendered? Is He really in your life? Yeah, you know He died. Yeah, you know He was perfect. And yeah, you know He raised up from the dead. But is it real in your life?
I called him that Friday night. I said, I just wanted to let you know that, man, I think something in my heart and mind have changed tonight. You really, some of the things you spoke kind of resonated with me a lot. So then I began to see my life change as well. And said, hey, listen, there's so much changing. I really feel like God's doing a lot in my life. I'd love to get out of my situation at the College of Charleston. Can you help? And he got me to North Greenville and I remember we were sitting, this guy, Buddy Mason, if I remember his name correctly, saying, why should I let this guy in? He's 21 years old. He's full of trouble, almost kicked out, failing everything. And I remember Pastor Stephen just saying, hey, he's going to do great. He's on my dime. And I remember Buddy Mason saying, okay, I'll let him in. I met my wife there, which was obviously a great thing. And then shortly after Pastor Stephen and Holly graduated, Nicole and I joined them to plant Elevation. And so we had just moved to Charlotte to start the church. I bought 2 tickets to U2. So the day of the concert, I called my wife and I was like, listen, let's just be honest for a second. You really don't want to go to this. Come on, we have a general admission to U2. I know you really don't want to go, but I don't want to let you down. And she's like, no, take Pastor. Of course, that's what you want to do. So I called Pastor. I was like, hey, talk to Nicole. Good to go. Come on, let's go see U2. And then our whole conversation the whole way back was like, man, what's it going to be like when Elevation Church has, experiences and when we're playing that arena and instead of, everybody, going crazy for Streets Have No Name, what's it going to be like when they're singing songs that we write?
It's the same passion and the same energy that he was using when we were in Laura, South Carolina, under a little barbecue tent with kids that have come from all around in this trailer park, and it was hot as Hades, and he's still preaching and ministering to these kids. It's the same passion, it's the same fervor, it's the same energy. It's just now on a much, much larger scale.
I honestly believe that Pastor Stephen is one of the most important voices on this planet today for this generation. He's called by God, he's equipped by God, he's got the favor and the hand of God on his life, and what's happening now is truly phenomenal, and I know beyond a shadow of a doubt, it is only the beginning.
He is the perfect example of somebody who was faithful in little and then was given much to be faithful over.
I mean, his character is as genuine as you would want for a pastor of our church to be. I've seen him make hard decisions. I've seen him suffer with people. I've seen him be generous when generosity was not the thing that would be expected. I've seen all those different things. The anointing, I think, comes from that he lives what he preaches.
I've got to live my life in such a way that people will just be drawn to Jesus. He said if I'd lift him up, he'd draw all men unto him. So I have got to lift him up in the way I live, the way I talk, the way I walk. Gotta be something different in me. I can't be like everybody else. I've got to show this hurting, dying, lost world something they don't have.